Once more, good evening. What is the role of thought in our life is a question which I guess most of us have to a great extent understood. I'm saying to a great extent because if we had totally understood it, our life would be very different. We understand, next moment we forget. The trappings of thought are quite treacherous. Some time back, a friend of mine and I had some tea at some roadside restaurant, and both of us felt this tea is not so good somehow. As you know, sometimes a roadside cafe also can give us excellent tea if we are lucky, and some other times, even the tea at a very well known, prestigious restaurant can be bad if we are unlucky. Both my friend and I said in one voice, looks like these fellows are reheating the same milk or maybe the same decoction, reheating and then again serving it to the customers. This is not freshly made tea with fresh ingredients. I'm giving this analogy because when life is influenced by thought, something similar happens. There is no originality. It is all mechanical. There is so much of imagined happiness. For example, I see you on a chair. You are the CEO of a big company. What is that? They listed among the top 500 companies selected by, I guess, some magazine called Fortune or some other Fortune 500 companies. Ooh. And if you are a CEO of one of those Fortune 500 companies, everybody envies you. Not really everybody. Everybody means most people. Most people means those who are foolish. And in this world, the most people are foolish, of course. Oh, their son is a Fortune 500 company CEO. Oh, then my son also becomes very ambitious. He adopts good and wicked tricks and strategies to somehow sit on the same chair. 5 years down the road, he is on a chair of the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. And as he sits there, though there are lots of anxieties and worries, and he has a fear whether he will keep that chair for more than a year, yet, there is a certain satisfaction. I arrived here. Now, let's not to go too long with the analogy. But what is meant here is that happiness my son gets by becoming the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. How far is it genuine? Oops, what happened? Oh, it is nothing happened. I think it's working. Ah. Is it genuine happiness or does thought have a role to play in that happiness? In a whole lot of scenarios where you and I experience happiness, it is like that reheated tea. I imagine that the other guy who sat on a Fortune 500 CEO's chair must have been so happy. I envy him. Whether he truly has to be envied or not, we don't know. But in my imagination, we are all ordinary people and look at him and so on. Then I sit on, or my son sits on the same chair, and it is reheated tea, not fresh tea. A large proportion of some sort of happiness he gets is created by thought. We are here this evening to understand nature of thought and negation of thought. In the sublime teachings of Krishnaji, we find him hammering on thought. Why under the sun does he do so? Most people do not understand it. We frequently come across people who say, I tried to read Krishnamurti but could not understand what he was saying. In a way, somebody like me is highly qualified to understand them because I went through that for many years. Even though I was a bit of a Sanskrit scholar and was giving lectures already on Gita or whatever, I could not understand Krishnamurti at least for about 10 years. Of course, I never really put my heart and soul into any of the literature. A bit here, a bit there, and then just wondering, what, what is he talking? He is simply coming down heavily on tradition and so on. But then once it started making sense, there was no looking back. That is how I am with all of you, if not week after week, on alternate weeks. For it's such joy exploring the network of thought, finding how we have become second-hand persons, how both our joy and sorrow are fabricated by thought. And if only we were to free ourselves from the clutches of thought, the quality of our life would be so different. This morning I was reading a book. The author is a neurosurgeon in Stanford University, which should not matter who he is. But he says, very interesting, some Tibetan monks were invited by some scientists, I guess in the Americas, and they were told to cooperate with an experiment. They were given some kind of cap, not ordinary cap, but that cap had provision for some 40 or 50 electrodes all over those caps. The electrodes would go and touch the head very tightly, and the monks, Tibetan monks who were said to be quite adept in quietening their mind, quietening their brain, etc., and they were asked to cooperate with this experiment. Please meditate and go into certain states which you only are capable of. They said, yes, we will do that. Now comes the interesting part. The author James Doty, Doty, he says, when the scientists said just before starting the experiment, we want to understand compassion in you. You guys, you monks are said to be very compassionate people. We want to understand compassion in you by seeing the electroencephalogram brain waves. Therefore, we have put all these electrodes. As you move into a state of compassion, we would see how your brain functions. After hearing the scientists say that, I believe the monks heartily laughed and so on. The scientists were embarrassed. Why are these monks laughing? First they thought, oh, they are laughing. Maybe they looked at this cap uh, to be very funny with all those. Because with each of those little round attachments, there was a wire coming. So if there are 64, touch points, there are 64 wires emerging from their head. Maybe they looked at themselves in the mirror and it was very funny how we look. But then the monks stunned them by a statement. After laughing, the monks said, well, all of you scientists think compassion is in the brain. Our outlook is different. Compassion is in heart, not in brain. Very interesting statement. I'm going to study that more. That book is called Magic Room or something. So it's about, the whole book is about brain and heart. And I would not be surprised. I'm yet to cross 100 pages. I wouldn't be surprised if there is quite a bit reflecting Krishnaji's insights. You see, in such a scenario, the scientists are focusing on brain waves. We are not neuroscientists, we don't know all those brain experiments. But you and I are so much into thoughts. What do you think? Suppose you become president of the country. What do you think if you become that? What do you think if a certain title, certain badge, certain description applies to you? Will you feel on top of the world? And we foolishly think, ah, if I become, if I become this, thought creates images. And it must be a tragic joke. We also sometimes dream of, I want to be the most compassionate person on the earth. I want to be the most compassionate person humanity ever saw. Would it not be wonderful to be the most compassionate person? I want to become. So, even a compassionate person is as though like another CEO's chair. I want to become. That's where I guess Tibetan monks had a hearty laugh. True compassion, the wise say, is when all desire to become either rich or famous or successful and so on and so forth. All desire to become goes away. Goes away thanks to understanding. For a moment we want to become, moment we want to be looked at by people as an expert in this subject or most skilled in that or most good looking. It is utter foolishness if any of us who have been studying Krishnaji, for example, if we desire, if we entertain a desire, people should regard me as the one who has understood Krishnaji to the best in modern times. To become an expert in botany or zoology, or to become an expert in Vedanta or Krishnamurti, to become the most compassionate one on the earth, any desire to become is the antithesis of that pure goodness. In true goodness, thought takes a backseat. Self image, either the desire to fit into a certain image or the fear of slipping into another image. Will I be mocked at? Will I be laughed at? Will I be held in low esteem by people? Will everybody praise that X or Y and nobody has a word of praise for me? God forbid. In this way, when thought operates, leave aside what the society does. We, being a victim of such thinking, are living under the weight of fancy, fiction, and not fact. To be with facts has been rightly said to be the art of living. Be with fact. Go from fact to fact. Whereas we go from dream to dream, fiction to fiction, fancy to fancy, and we fancy that one day we will become free of all fancies. It's quite funny, really, how our mind is a dream weaver. Our mind weaves dreams after dreams, and it is highly challenging to have the so called silent mind. So, we want to see the nature of thought and the negation of it. A few more words and then I will pause. It seems to me, I am no expert, it seems to me that the nature of thought, of course, it's from memories, it's from conditionings, it's from accumulated knowledge. But basically, thought makes us more and more artificial. Thought takes us away from our childlike simplicity, not childishness, but childlike simplicity. Thought brings about many distortions because when we are ambitious, when we want to knowingly or unknowingly project ourselves, very many distortions take place. I believe a man wanted to write a 2000 pages essay on the harm of smoking. He was bent upon finishing that essay in 48 hours. And driven by that desire to write a very, very informative essay on the harm of smoking, to speed himself up in penning down those words, he finished off 3 or 4 packets of cigarettes. He smoked and smoked. That's what I just cooked up a simple analogy. When there is ambition, when there is the mischief of thought, chasing a image, then we do things which are self-defeating. Like this man wanted to write a very informative article on harm of smoking, and he smoked and smoked and smoked. So even some speakers on philosophical topics, the Buddha mind and the empty mind, are some high topic they take, but to an extent known to them and at times unknown to them, a certain desire to be knowledgeable on the Buddha. It is rightly said that it is one thing to be a professor of Buddhism and totally another to be Buddha. To be the Buddha really means no desire, no pressure, no flaunting, no showing off of knowledge, no display of the books that this man has written. This is my 12th book on the Buddha. In this way, if somebody says proudly, watch it. So that pride of knowledge of Buddhism and whatever, of course, is different from the Buddha state of mind. Now, what is negation? When we truly understand the nature of thought, how it takes us away from reality, how it takes away from our childlike, simple nature, or perhaps James Doty would say, how brain hijacks us and we become heartless. This book is about the roles of head and heart. He seems to say today's world gives too much importance to head, and the heart is sometimes ignored, alas, sometimes is mocked at also. People confuse being a man of good heart with being sentimental fool. If someone has certain noble feelings, feelings for others, some kind of unconditional care or compassion, immediately the world says, such an impractical fellow, keep away from him. Alas. So James Doty, professor, seems to make a strong case for balancing brain and heart. It seems that he recognizes the place of brain. Brain has a function, but if only our lives are guided by the heart, it is the heart which can host compassion. The head cannot host compassion. The head can solve mechanical problems, scientific problems. The head can design aeroplanes, rockets. The head can do a lot of wonderful things which we do need in life, but the heart makes for harmonious relationships, peace, unconditional caring, and so on. So, negation of thought, lastly, it seems to me, comes about when in quiet moments we see the self contradictory nature of thought. How thought is actually doing the opposite of our desire at the bottom of our heart. At the bottom of our hearts, all of us wish to love and to receive love, to love and be loved. We want to experience other human beings or nature, the clouds, the sun, the moon, the stars, the plants, the animals, whatever. We want to experience the whole world as sending love towards us. We want to experience love coming from us towards all directions. But we find that thought, wanting to be famous, wanting to be rich, wanting to have people at our control, under our control, we want more and more people to just do as we want them to do. In our desire for freedom, which perhaps is understandable, we jump to the opposite. We sometimes think that I will be free when everybody listens to me. What about their freedom then? You want to be free, robbing them of freedom? Does it not make a very funny situation? Your freedom requires others to lose their freedom. And does it mean that if others are given freedom, you lose your freedom? So there is some confusion over there. Definitely, we don't get free either by bossing over others, nor do we get free, of course, by bowing down before others. No wonder we have in the teachings, do not follow anybody and do not let anybody follow you. Do not lead, do not follow. Walk together. Such teachings we come across. We deeply appreciate them when we see that habitually, if we are wanting to lead others, we want to be a light to others. That is one mischief of thought. And habitually, we want to say, at least pretentiously, yes, yes, I agree with you. Thank you for giving me direction. You are my guide now, blah, blah. So, habitually, not truly from the heart, we have become clever. In English, there is an expression, stooping to conquer. We bend only to eventually get control over the other person. These are the clever ways in which the self operates. So, negation, in my limited understanding, is when we directly notice the contradiction, the foolishness, the immaturity, the wickedness sometimes of thought. You want to use knowledge also to get some superior position over somebody in the society in some context, then is that knowledge freeing us or is that knowledge binding us? Should money, knowledge, talent, looks, good health, or any such thing, should it be a tool so that we can boss over others? Or should we fear ill health because we fear others will boss over us? If there is clarity of perception, can poverty lead to being, bossed over by others? I guess let me say this and conclude. I guess if there is clarity of perception, whether we are poor or rich, no one can boss over us. If there is no clarity of seeing, even if we are millionaires or billionaires, in a very subtle way we are afraid of others. So fear and the crippling kind of desire both rise out of lack of clarity of perception, not because we are poor or rich, not whether because we have a chair to sit on or we have no chair to sit on. Therefore, the teachings emphasize on clear seeing. In clear seeing, thought gets negated. In clear seeing, things then move on out of an insight, not out of thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Swamiji. Harshad sir, please unmute.
Yes, are you able to hear?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Swamiji. This is a very important topic because our life mostly lived in thinking and feeling. And when we are born, we don't know anything. But when we go to school, college, university, and we acquire a lot of knowledge and that knowledge keeps on interfering with learning something new. So, in a way, thinking is helpful, or it can be not helpful. It can prevent seeing clearly. How this thinking arises? It arises because we have learned a language and we have a memory stored, and from that, thinking has become a habit for most of us. And also, we are not aware of how this thinking is coming and going. And if we are not aware, then it can be very destructive. It can breed, thinking can breed anger, fear, jealousy, many psychological problems. They arise because thinking has become a habit, and also we are not aware of what is happening. So we immediately react when somebody says something unpleasant. So in my view, we cannot negate thinking. Thinking will keep on coming, but there is a possibility of seeing as it is. And that dimension is what Krishnamurti calls awareness. So generally, this awareness is not awakened in most human beings. Either you call it awareness or intelligence, is not awakened, and so life becomes a big problem. And this beginning of the problem is not seen clearly. But when this intelligence is there in the background, then thoughts can be seen exactly as they are. And even if it is a negative thought, it can be seen clearly. It doesn't harm us. So our difficulty is not thinking. Thinking is useful, and of course it is destructive both. But beyond this thinking and feeling, there's a different dimension called intelligence or awareness, or as you said, clear seeing. That clear seeing, which is not a part of thinking. And so it is in, if we consider thinking and feeling as a two-dimensional plane, then awareness or intelligence is in the third dimension, which can see thinking and feeling very clearly. But if we are on the plane only of thinking and feeling, we cannot see the whole of it. And so it breeds many problems in relationship. So Krishnaji also said that and sometimes he said thinking is an enemy. Now I would say it is enemy, seeing or intelligence or awareness doesn't exist, is not awakened. So the whole, whether you call it traditional teaching of Advaita or Vedanta or Krishna's teaching, is come to that dimension of that choiceless awareness or intelligence, which can see all these thoughts coming as they are coming, not later on. So um, what is required is an ongoing, effortless awareness. Then we can see the whole, how thinking is creating problems. And when it is seen, problems get dissolved, conflict in relationship, or when people get very much carried away by their ideas and they argue and they don't know that it is harmful to have conflict, to have anger. These are very damaging to our own body. So when that sensitivity comes, that this fear, anger, jealousy, it is harmful to our own body. And to see it, that harmfulness, that requires this intelligence. And without that, we get carried away by habits like smoking, drinking, drugs, which happens, and then arguing and intellectual arguments and all that happens when there is no intelligence of it. So um, negation, we cannot negate, because what entity can negate thought? If we say I negate, but that I itself is coming from thinking, so thinking cannot be negated by a will, but it can be negated without effort when this intelligence is awakened. And so, and how this intelligence can be awakened? Only when we become very, very curious to look at our inner world, because our whole education is about the outside world, physics and history and all, knowing about the universe. But as long as we have not really looked in a direct way how these thoughts are coming, and to look at this thought coming, we need something else than thinking. So it means that one needs clarity or freedom at the beginning to see thinking clearly. And that is a difficulty, that why it is that we are not able to see the beginning of a problem. It is because we have not been really curious to look at our inner world, forgetting everything what Krishnaji has said or what Vedanta has said. When we become very curious and passion to look inward, then what Krishnaji says or what Vedanta says seems very simple, and we don't need to make a lot of effort to understand. Making an effort to understand is a waste of energy. Either we see it clearly or we don't see it. And that can come only when we are passionate to look at our inner world, thoughts, feelings, how they are coming without any motivation, not in order to become free, but as curiosity, just like little children, they are curious about a butterfly or a bird. They don't want to know, collect the knowledge of that. So similarly, when we are able to look at the thoughts and feelings as they are arising without saying it is good or bad, and that is intelligence, choiceless awareness. So that is lacking, and that is why uh, thinking becomes a problem. There is no need to negate thought, I feel. Thought will come and go, but it will not disturb us if we can see clearly what is happening within us. Okay, I finished. Thank you.
विजय छाबड़ा जी, प्लीज अनम्यूट.
Well, I didn't really mean to say much, but I was just wondering about this brain and heart that Chidanandji brought out. I was wondering whether it is just a uh, metaphor at one level. It's or whether physical entity we think here the brain is here and heart is here, but we also know that all the cells have their memories and the body has its own intelligence. We hear everything in body, the gut brain, even that has a certain role to play, probably tremendous role to play, maybe, because the actual somewhere when we something strikes you like lightning and something hits you and you have a feeling it's like from within, like for which you don't need any validation. It's so. That seems to come from gut brain. So it's a maybe it's a metaphor, and Krishnji would say, put your brain in your heart, you know, or listening with the heart. So all this is probably emphasizing that there's a uh, we seem to maybe generally are all lopsided, either go with sharp brain with very astute argumentation and all, and or become into emotional, which we may feel is like you as a human being you are alive, so emotions are part of you, and it's more authentic in some way, but it can also degenerate into sentimentality. So it's a uh, you know uh, quite a play, and this so not emphasizing, is it possible not to overemphasize anything and allow the wholeness of being to play it out, and it may be seen as emotional, maybe seen as intellectual, maybe seen as this or that. So, so I think it's a need, probably needs to be seen at that. I am just wondering. I was just wondering. Isn't it more of a metaphor? What is it that we intend to communicate, and not so much physical. And physical level, they're experimenting. They're trying out with all those electrodes or whatever. These will be always very limited conclusions, and like all conclusions, bound to be limited and not very meaningful, perhaps. So that's all. Thank you.
Swamiji, do
Yeah,
you want to
yeah.
say?
So, right, I would like to respond to Chabraji, and I very much agree with him. In fact, science itself has found that a whole lot of their compartmentalization is not true. See, many of us diabetics have recently received WhatsApp videos where some research done in laboratories has shown that some calf muscle, suppose we activate by pedaling movement of our feet, there is some exercise shown, then certain calf muscles are activated, and they, like you said, there is a gut brain. They talk about a heart in the calf muscle, a second heart. So these calf muscles do something for pumping of the blood up and down or in whatever fashion. Therefore, it's not only the heart physically located inside the chest, but certain muscles in the calf area or whatever you call it. Therefore, neither the heart is localized inside the chest, nor the brain is localized inside the head here. And like you talked of a cellular level, that's also so true. And I remember one more case. Years ago, they said all logic is in left brain, all emotions is in right brain. L for logic, we people memorized. We professional speakers went around presenting some slides. L for logic, L for left brain, and right brain is emotional intelligence and all that. We read some books. But eventually, we were told that compartmentalization, that logic is left and emotions is right, also is not true. Certain parts of left brain get activated when one is emotional, and certain parts of right brain also are taking part in some analytical thinking. Therefore, our own body, our own anatomy, our own physiology or neurology or whatever other logy, they baffle us. There is no centralization. There seems to be a tremendous decentralization. Everything is everywhere in certain contexts, and then in certain other contexts, every limb seems to do particular functions. Kidneys are where kidneys are, head is where head is, in certain ways, but otherwise, nothing can be generalized. Therefore, I fully appreciate the point made. Maybe we can call it metaphor. or maybe we can call it some kind of view with its own limitations. Lastly, even in physics, we in high school physics we read the model of an atom, nucleus at the center, electronics rotating around. But eventually we were told all that the Rutherford's model, Niels Bohr's model, etc. are outdated. Now electrons are not even particles. There are some wave distributions, some energy distributions, and you don't know where is what. So our head goes swirling. Even those of us who have read some physics, taught some physics also have our head swirling. In this way, I guess the intelligence woven into this universe baffles our limited intelligence of the self. We finally raise our hand saying, I don't know anything. Thank you. I would rather just listen to the Indore group. Better not I open my mouth anymore. Thank you, Chabraji. It was a wonderful input from your side.
Pradeep ji.
Uh, Good evening, friends. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, because most of the things have been covered by Swamiji. To start with, he gave a very nice introduction to the whole thing, a bird's eye view. Then Harshadji touched a little deeper in that and uh, uh, talked about this topic, very important topic. The main point is understanding in this understanding. My understanding about understanding is in words only, because I am speaking. So friends, take it with a pinch of salt. Understanding is not a word, neither word nor memory or meaning. Thought is all that. Thought is all this which we are talking about, understanding thought. Certain points came to my mind. For my understanding, we cannot have thoughts about understanding. Yet it is about myself as being. Likewise, negation. Negation happens, self is not interfering with likes and dislikes. It happens automatically, and Swamiji has also touched, if the perception is right, if you can see things as they are, that happens. That happens. You don't have to put, that entity doesn't have to separate itself from the perception. So that happens. To me, understanding is nothing and everything, because it happens in the moment, almost timeless moments. And it has some relationship probably with insight. At times, this thought comes to you whether this and insight are similar, because I am also trapped by words. So this happens frequently. Then Chabraji covered a very good point. Although he said it, he gave it a name of metaphor. Compassion, Swamiji said, compassion is in the heart. It looks very simple to look to hear that and put it in our column of intellect, that it is not in the heart, it is not in the mind, it is in the heart. So we can go on sharing this sentence with our friends and quoting certain scientists even, because I read about these things, and actually heart is full of neurons. Heart is full of neurons. Heart is a very big brain in a way. As Chabraji said, but everything is connected to everything, and each cell is totipotent in the sense, sensitive and aware of what is happening around. So it's we can't reject it as mechanical or physical and this thing. It is because ultimately we'll have to come back to that. Yes, the life is psychosomatic. Psycho comes first and soma comes later on. So we have to be, because the main word is understanding. What is understanding? What is understanding? Understanding myself is that seeing myself from moment to moment, what thoughts are coming, what am I listening, what is disturbing, if at all. So ultimately, moment to moment awareness is all that is required in our day-to-day life. Thank you, friends. Thank you very much, giving me enough time. Thank you.
Hello. Are you able to listen me?
Yeah.
Hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Today I am also a little bit shaken because this is a very difficult and tricky topic of J. Krishnamurti. Because what is negation? We will come to that. In my views, negation is very tricky thing. And let us talk about JK first. What he says about understanding. What is implied in understanding? Is it verbal understanding, a comprehension through verbal communication, a description, a comprehension through affection, or is it an insight into something? This is very important. Or is it an insight into something which is rather complex and confused? Or does understanding takes place not merely through words, not merely the description, but going beyond the words? Which means both you and other are free of the verbal structure, which is the nature of thought, and penetrating and having an insight. So here he is stressing on insight. We are talking of understanding psychologically, deeply, not the mere worldly understanding. And insight means having a sight in something which then becomes the truth. My views, fragmented truth. Of course, he is talking of fragmented truth. Such insight will wipe away any misunderstanding, any complexity, or one has clear sight in that. Insight is not a moment, it is a direct perception. Understanding takes place in a flash, not in the process of time. Now, second comes the thought. We know we have talked enough of thought, so I will just will talk briefly on it, and then I will go for the negation. Thought divides as the outer and the inner. It destroys the unity. This is important point. It destroys the unity. If one inquire into the whole structure of thought, see what its place is, where it is not necessary, then you will find out the mind that is intelligent, that will operate intelligently. And when thought doesn't function, and when thought must function. So he is not saying here that thought is he is not giving any negative label on thought. He says where thought, we have to see whether where the thought is functioning should function and where thought should not function. If you put an end to thought, if that is at all possible, then how will you operate when you want to go home or office, which Harshad sir was saying. Thought is apparently necessary. So we are saying thought is dangerous in a certain direction because it divides, and yet thought must function function logically, sanely, objectively, healthily in another direction. Thought cannot resolve confusion, cannot bring about love. So when thought is still something, uh, when thought is still, something new can be. We saw both that point clearly, and to understand it clearly is the ending of thought. Now come to negation. What is negation? What is positive? To be led appears to be positive. He is talking of normal people. Constructive, and to have who are conditions. To follow one the truth, that following is evil, seems negative, destructive. Truth is the negation of false, not the opposite of the false. Truth is the negation of false, not the opposite of the false. Truth is entirely different from the positive and the negative. And a mind which thinks in terms of the opposites can never be aware. Thought being means a response of past moves between polarities. Negation can only take place when the mind sees the false. Now, what is negation? Nobody has means very few places he has said what is negation. In negation, you have energy, vitality, clarity. Meditation is the denial and negation of all systems. False is means negation is to have insight into false. False is say pleasure, remembrance, desire. Likewise, you have to negate these things means you have to give them right place. They are not bad or they are not negative, but you have to give them the right place. Thought always wants more power, etc. So we see that what he means by negation, this is the, my views are, this is the vertical axis. This is not the horizontal axis. Horizontal axis, you are having polarities, plus and minus. Whereas in vertical axis, when you see the truth, then, and if you are having energy, this is these are my views, then you will be having negation of that. When we say negation, means that thought will never generate itself or emerges. That thought should not come at all. Then only we can say that it is negation. Suppose we feel that a particular thing which is troubling us, and we see the whole structure of the thought and understand and why it is we see the origin of that thought, and if we see the truth, then we will have insight, and that thought will not emerge at all from the next time. Then that is the negation, real negation. Thank you.
Swamiji.
Swamiji.
Yeah. That's a wonderful sharing by Dinesh ji. As usual, he seems to do some good homework before speaking on this topic. And his comments on what actually is thought and what is the place of perception are indeed well taken. Once we think about thought, there is no seeing of thought. I guess when there is seeing of thought, then there is a certain point of silence from where that seeing takes place. Um, so this whole matter of being aware sometimes becomes another concept in our mind, which is not supposed to be. It's not a concept to be aware, though we make it a concept in the early stages of learning. The true nature of being aware is to be aware. That's about it. There is no concept is a thought. Concept is a visualization. Concept is with some boundaries. I have a concept of, let us say, mathematics. Then some images I have. Oh, mathematics is so many equations, so many graphs. Oh, I'm averse to it. I may, or somebody else says I love it. But either way, it is some particular images. When understanding gets boundaries, it gets particularized, then sometimes it may seem a bit easier, but it does injustice to that principle or that phenomenon. True awareness, thought gets exposed. If I got him right, Dinesh ji labeled to say or throw some light on the true nature of negation. You don't really go about negating, but you notice, quietly you notice. In your noticing the fallacies of thought, it should get negated. So seeing is negation. There is no active function. Okay, now I am going to negate it. Not like taking an axe and saying, now I am going to cut this tree. All that is okay for figurative language. But let me conclude my 2 cents saying negating is not an action, it is seeing itself. It seems to me so. Thank you.
Ravi Kaushal.
Yes, sir. Am I audible, sir?
Yes, you are audible.
So the today's topic is understanding and then thought and its negation. So, so actually big topic. Uh, there is emotion first, and when the mind is stuck with the emotions, then it cannot. It's a reactive mind. There is a reactive mind, and then there is all the physical chemical reaction in the body and all that. So it start from there, and like Kay said that you have to start from where you are. So and you see all the emotions, and when you see them, without justifying or without condemning them, when you start seeing them, then there is a space, and then and when there is a space, then the space is not the previous space you have. It's a new space in your consciousness, in your mind. That new space frees you from the content. So it's this is then there is after this emotion, and then there is a thought. Thought is very tricky thing, and I think it's a very complex thing, and thought and its negation. So and negation starts I think from Adi Shankaracharya, Vedanta and all that, and he start with this uh, not this, not this, neti neti and all that. Sorry, I have not listened previous speakers much, but I'm late today. So and this so what Adi Shankaracharya is saying, I think it's more on Viveka. When you are in search of the truth, to that which is not absolute truth, you have to discard that. It depends on Viveka. So it's more of intellectual, based on intellectual movement. So this is one thing. And what Kay is saying on its negation is on perception. And it's not negation. It's like when you see the fallibility of anything, total absolute fallibility, it drops by itself. You don't have to, do anything, something for that. Or you say that I have to negate that. It drops by itself the moment you see its fallibility. the moment you see its actual fallibility, it's not there. The mind, the consciousness is free from that at once. It is this is case perception based, negation kind of thing. And then there is emotion, there is, and then there is that part. Thought is very tricky thing. It is very subtle thing, very subtle thing. So observer is very subtle thing. So there is there is our knowledge of one subject or two subject or 10,000 subject. So when there is an understanding based on knowledge, so it's a in that thing there is an active role of the center, and there is totally active role in the center. And one thing, K said somewhere that knowledge is always limited. So the moment you see that, the moment you actually see that the mind is free from that thing, then you are not moving with the knowledge. Then there is some another thing in play, and the then there is a knowledge, and knowledge is like it's a spiral kind of thing. It's a movement in from not knowing to not knowing. It's a movement from knowing to knowing. Know more, more, and it's like 12 GB, 12,000 GB, 10,000 GB, 10,000 TB. It's just a, still it is a limited thing. Still it is always a limit. This is one thing about knowledge, and then there is an understanding. Understanding, we have seen that it is either based on viveka and on intellect, or it is understanding based on perception. So both have its all repercussions, and I think understanding, I say, understanding is also a kind of spiral thing. It seems to me like that. It's also a kind of spiral thing. It's a movement from not knowing to not knowing. And in understanding, it also it's a limited. It's not limited, but it's still. I can say understanding. Understanding is a spiral thing, and how perception-based understanding, and it's still an individual thing. Sorry, I can see now. It's still an individual thing. It makes your individuality. Every person says it's if it is K's understanding, if it is Lord Krishna understanding, Jesus understanding, whatever, whosoever is understanding. Understanding is still a limit, individual thing. Limited nahi, individual thing. Right? So and to me, it's not still take, and it's also in still a movement. You're understanding more and more and more. Though in understanding there is that thing of because I said that observer is a very subtle thing. It moves in that thing also. It moves in moves with this understanding also. It seems to me like that. Though there is another chapter of K that if there is an understanding, if there is learning and emptiness can go together, if there is learning and there is emptiness, then that thing is I think has immense space, immense. Then there is no limitation, and and if the things are based on understanding, suppose let's say Dinesh Waghmare speaks on the base of knowledge. So it seems to me that it is always in the compartments, or in it's a movement from knowing to, and then another knowing, and then another knowing, opening another chapter. But still it's a movement of the center observer on active basis. It's an example, but and let's say there is an understanding of Harshad Parekh sir, and it is based on experience, and but it is still based on experience. So that understanding is still, as I said, that understanding is always a individual thing. It's Harshad Parekh's understanding. He talks from that understanding. Though it is not based on knowledge, it is based on experience, but experiencer is always there. So that's why I said that observer is a very subtle thing. It is not like that you. And one more thing that it seems to me that any understanding of awareness is not awareness by itself. But without awareness, there cannot be any understanding. So, and there is understanding, eventually there are good sayings of many masters like Papaji or Ramana or Nisargadatta and all that. And there is one saying I remember, there is nothing to understand. So, and on understanding, there is one statement of Nisargadatta I remember, that is, ultimate understanding is that there is no ultimate understanding. So understanding is still a spiral thing. If you say, if your insight or conscience or conscious is based on understanding, it's still an individual thing. Awareness is far deeper thing. It has nothing to do with knowledge, nothing to do with understanding. Of course, it opens it opens space in the consciousness, no doubt of it's kind of evolution in consciousness. But awareness is totally different chapter. It is not uh, by you cannot understand awareness like that. If you understand awareness, it is conclusion, and it is all then again back to pavilion you are. So you have to see that. And this negations thought and its negation based on perception is always very it's a like of actually a bomb. It destroys everything if it is based on perception. It's absolute clarity, man. Absolute clarity. So there is knowledge, there is understanding, and then there is awareness. So awareness is, it's all perception and all that, but understanding, I say that understanding is still a limited thing. I'm not saying it's a limit, it's an individual thing. You understand one thing, I understand another thing. So it is like that. Thank you, sir.
Swamiji.
Thank you, Ravi Kaushal ji. What comes out through your sharing is an authenticity of how you yourself have thought over all these things and given expression to your ways of seeing those things. So yes, some kind of thought that, oh, I am aware now defeats awareness. I am aware now, or some kind of effort at being aware is far from the simple bright flame of awareness. So in many such ways you have shared some thoughts on conceptual thinking as well as really coming in touch with what those words actually point to. So awareness is the central theme of a whole lot of these discussions, and it itself is very deceptive or illusory. Moment we think, today I have been living in great awareness. So once that thought interferes, I wonder whether there is awareness at all. And of course, it is very silly to wonder, am I more aware of things than my wife is? Am I not more aware of my life than my brothers and others? So this comparison, this making being aware also as one more feather on our cap, is very silly indeed. So, but to be aware that our mind is prone to do all these things for fun, sometimes it begins for fun but ends up in another entrapment. You may get some pleasure in, some kind of who I am, how good I am, how skilled I am, how advanced I am, blah, blah. But that indulgence itself can be another trapping. How hard it is for us to be silent, while really to be silent should be most easy. To make noise requires effort. Noise means spending of energy, but we are so prone to noise and just cannot remain silent. So I appreciate the submissions of Raviji. Wonderful.
May I
Prasad sir.
make a comment? May I make a comment?
Yes, sir. Harshad sir. Afterward,
Yeah.
Prasad sir will say something.
Okay. So I just make a short comment that all this thing what we are talking is not related to the words, but we are using words to describe something which is beyond words. So I would use like a metaphor that thoughts are like a clouds. They come and go, but beyond these clouds, there exists the blue sky. That blue sky is like the awareness. And when there are no clouds, there only exists pure awareness. But when there are clouds, partly cloudy sky, in which there is a awareness and thoughts, they both exist. And when these thoughts, clouds are very, very dense and they cover completely the sky, there is no awareness and we are living mostly in thoughts only. So all these states are possible. What I'm trying to say, that awareness can exist even when there are thoughts, and it can be seen very clearly. These thoughts can be seen as they are in this awareness. And then sometimes there are no thoughts, so a pure awareness. And sometimes there are too many thoughts, and that blocks the awareness. And then we get caught into many problems. And that is what generally happens to human beings when they are not aware. There are many, many problems arise in conflicts in relationship. And that is happening every day. Okay, thank you.
Prasad sir.
Namaste, sir, everybody.
Namaste.
The topic is understanding thought and its a negation. So the topic is we have to understand thought means understand the nature of thought. What is thought? Thought is the past. We all have seen that. So you understand the nature of thought. That thought is basically a product of the past, your conditioning. And everybody has his own conditioning. The world is very wide, contains lots of religions, sects, ideologies, all sorts of things. So, but thought has its place. That is what Parekh Sahab also has said. It has its place in the science, in the development of science, in the development of medicine, in the development of communications, in the building up of our civilization. Thought has a place. But otherwise, apart from its place in building up civilization, what is thought? Thought creates the self. Thought basically makes you a narrow person. Self-enclosure. You are enclosed in thought. The thought itself becomes an enclosure. And you become a prisoner of that thought process. So, thought has its plus point, it has its minus point. Then the problem here is entire civilization is basically based on thought. Nobody bothers about anything beyond thought. So, thought creates an enclosure. You are enclosed in that thought process. Once you understand that, you will not become.
ये कितना है? ये 2.5 किलो, ये 40 रुपए किलो है। हाँ, भाव बढ़ गए।
You
सबके
don't
भाव
get
बढ़-
up. Then you become free. Once you understand that, there is no other way of becoming free. You can become free only when you have an insight into the nature of thought. And then thought creates the thinker also. That is another point. There is no thinker without thought. And the thinker is the self. So, the thinker is created by thought. And thought can lead you into so many illusions. You are fed some illusions from your childhood, boyhood, etc. And you embrace those illusions and think they are a big enlightenment, a process of enlightenment. So, that is another point that thought creates. And then, what is it we can do? What the thing is, we have to negate thought, and by negation, we negate thought in those aspects that when it is creating illusions or when it is creating your self-enclosures, all those, at those points, you negate thought. The problem with our education is it is pampering us on thought. There is no place for the heart. It is all brain. Education is all brain. If you are very brainy, you get good marks. You get a distinction. But actually, as a human being, you need both the brain and the heart. I think as Mr. Chhabra has said, these are only metaphors. The brain and the heart, these are words to symbolize certain things. Not that your brain alone gives you thought and your heart alone gives you feeling or emotion or sensitivity. We are not really competent to comment on that, whether they are localized or not. What is the localization for the heart? I don't know. But I can understand, I can see a hyacinth, a flower, enjoy it. That process of enjoyment, I think it is the functioning of the heart. When I measure certain things, I think it is the function of the brain. So, they are not localized. We don't know which organ itself creates your sensitivity and all that. As Swamiji has said, we have certain bodily organs. Those organs are specialized, like a kidney or lungs. or heart. Those are specialized organs. They have a particular function. But that doesn't mean that all thought, etc., we have a specialized organ for that. No. Our organs are specific for specific functions, and they are also not specific. That is the mystery of the universe. Universe has that mystery. We are not competent to probe into that or explain that. So, negation of thought is when we see the limitations of thought. Thought has its limitations, and when you see those limitations of thought, you have negated it. Otherwise, there is no particular activity of specifically negating it. Only seeing the limitations of thought is a negation. Thank you, sir.
Swamiji, last comment.
Oh, yes. Prasad Garu also concluded that it is seeing the limitations of thought. And our job is therefore not to make the seeing another concept, but really begin to see. Seeing is the way to seeing. We should never ask what are the 3 steps by which we begin to see. There are no steps to seeing. But the good news is seeing should not be difficult. Also, seeing is our nature actually. Just to see, just to be is our nature. To see is not some rocket science to be learnt by attending some courses and so on. Crash course on the art of seeing. We are not supposed to offer such. Don't package it. However, that's why I guess in Rishi Valley and other places they would have Astachala. Just to go sit, watch the sunset. It can be anywhere. It's some kind of a returning home, returning to our essential being. So we have, through operation of thought, become artificial people. We pick up something from somewhere and want to be like that, want to be like that. So seeing is more at the center of our being. Thinking is already some alienation from our own in an essential being, it seems. So I guess today's deliberations have been wonderful. Everybody contributing their bit in very elegant ways, very authentic ways to it places. I would appreciate it and conclude.
Thank you very much, Chidanandji, for giving 5 minutes more than 7:30. It deserves a lot of praise from my end. Modak, please end it now.